All right, guys, Shane Baker here with episode 5, I believe it is, of Predicting Patterns. Got a special guest today, talk with us about Lake Lanier for the upcoming Elite Series event. They were down on Palatka last week, and now they're going to be up on Lake Lanier. That's about as drastic of a change of fishing habitat as you can get. But without further ado, introduce my partner for tonight, Jason Meninger, FLW Tour Pro. How's it going, Jason?
Pretty good, Shay. I'm life on the road, man. Life on the road. I'm just coming back from Seminole and just doing a little driving around over there. So you caught me on the road.
You guys just finished up at Toho too for the FLW Tour, didn't you?
Yeah, I want to forget about that one though.
That wasn't good.
Yeah, old Toho. Florida is really never been good to me. I think I've fished 8 pro events down there, and I've cashed 2 checks. One's been on Toho, and one's on Okeechobee, and I just, for the life of me, I haven't been able to figure Florida out. It's I like to move around a lot. I'm kind of a run and gun guy, and I get that from cutting my teeth on Lake Lanier, which is typically a run and gun kind of lake, and I like to fish that way. And in Florida, it seems like you just got to stay put. You got to get in those areas where, you've got an active group of fish and just stay there. And I have a hard time doing that. So I keep telling myself one of these times I'm going to do that, and it didn't happen there. So, but that's just fishing. It's the way it is, man.
Yeah. Well, let's jump up to Lake Lanier, where you got a top 10 in the Forest Wood Cup there. You've had a lot of experience there. That's a massive lake. I mean, I wrote it down earlier. I think it's 619 miles of shoreline, something like that. I mean, that's 692 miles of shoreline, 38,000 acres. That's a monster.
It is. It's a big lake, but it's kind of, I don't know, man. It's kind of easy to break down because there's really three things you got to think about. There's the rivers. There's the Chestatee River. And then there's the Chattahoochee River, which is the larger of the 2 rivers, and the longer river. But and you've got the river system. You got what I call mid-lake, where the rivers come together. And then when you get south of Browns Bridge, you get into what I call the South Lake. So I kind of break the lake down in 3 different areas.
So what do you think? It's going to be a hardcore pre-spawn, I'm assuming, this time of year. Y'all fished there last year, and I think it took 68.4 to win, but that was in March, about a month from now. What do you think? I mean, is it going to be... I know it's a herring lake, and do y'all fish like the little Kitex or bigger swim baits or underspins, kind of like we saw in Hartwell a few years ago in the Classic? What's the deal there this time of year?
Yeah, well, I mean, everything is weather dependent this time of year. It's really all about kind of where the water temperature is. I know that the lake is very high. They've had a lot of rain in Georgia and in the south over the last month. And the lake level is, I think it's a foot or so over full pool. I don't know exactly where it is, but I know it's over full pool. And there's a lot of trees in the water too, so which is kind of different. There's a lot of fallen trees in the water, but the water's high, and it really, this time of year, we can see water that's in the upper 50s if we've had 3 or 4 days of warm weather, or we could see water in the 40s, in the upper 40s. So depending on, I kind of look at it as, is the water temperature moving up or is it moving down? And depending on that is really how I would fish. But if we've got some cold fronts coming in, then I would stay deep. And the spotted bass on that lake. I mean, this tournament will be won by spotted bass. There's certainly going to be some guys that catch largemouth. There's no doubt about that. But over a 4-day event, it's going to be big spotted bass. And for the most part, I mean, you can catch those fish shallow in less than 12, 15 feet of water. But this time of year, it's 25 to 38 foot. That's kind of where they're going to be at.
So yeah, I pulled up the weather while you were talking. There's a big storm. There's a little line pushing through right now. There's a big storm coming, and looks like it's going to be 100% chance tomorrow. And it looks like maybe rain again Friday and Saturday and Sunday. So doesn't look like they're going to get sunny conditions.
What about water? What about water temp? What was the weather? The actual temperature, air temperature?
Yeah, you're going to have lows tonight 48, tomorrow night 36, 33, 46, 47, 39. Only suns on Wednesday, and the highs are 55 to 62.
Yeah. So I mean, I think a lot of fish will be. It really, everything's about the bait this time of year too. You know, trying to locate where the bait is. The drains are going to be a factor on the south end of the lake, and then also too in the middle part of the lake as well. But in the middle part of the lake, you'll have a little more stain, so you know some of those drains you'll catch the fish a lot shallower. They could be in anywhere from say 10 to 20 feet of water. But as you go down into the cleaner water in the south end, you're probably looking at catching those fish anywhere from 20 to 35 foot.
So you talk about the drains, you mean just like the ditches and these kind of the
That's
middles?
Right. Yeah, the little fingers, we call them drains, but they're essentially ditches. And a lot of times too, where the fish can be, you have to graph a lot. You got to kind of see where the bait is. Early in the morning, first thing in the morning, the bait's usually shallow in those drains. So you can catch them, maybe in 12 to 18 feet of water, right in the middle, right down the middle of the drain. And then as the sun gets up, the bait kind of scatters a little bit, and it starts to pull out near where the timber comes into the drain, and that's usually around 30 to 35 foot. And so the fish will be out a little bit deeper. But usually that drain bite, it's an early morning deal where you try to catch them before the sun gets up over your head. First hour and a half or 2 hours. Now if it's cloudy, then you can run that deal a little bit longer, obviously. But once the sun gets up, then those fish move out a little bit deeper and the bait scatters.
This lake, I mean, it seems like every pocket on it's 30 feet deep. It's just a monster. Like, how do you say you just graph a ton, but is there any other deal with it as far as like the north side or the north facing or the east facing ones are typically the deal, or is it just cover a ton of water?
No, it's not. And, and the other thing is historically there, being a local, there are certain drains that year after year continue to hold fish. And it's not necessarily one side of the lake or the other side. It's just, I think more than anything, having a good defined, either like a feeder creek or something that actually feeds, that makes it kind of a defined drain, that seems to help. Where I guess either fresh water can run in, that kind of thing too. They seem to like those, or the bait does anyway. The bait gets up in those a little bit better. But it's really, it's almost like when you're looking for this deal, you really don't even want to bring a fishing rod. You want to just get out early in the morning and you want to graph and just spend 2 or 3 hours every morning just kind of looking for those drains that have a lot of bait. If you find the bait, you're going to have, there's going to be some spotted bass in there with them. And that's kind of the key thing. And you'll hit a lot and you won't see any bait at all. And they're just worthless. So it's really just got to spend the time looking. And eventually you're going to run into them. And the thing about it is when you find it, it's pretty quick and it's fast and furious. You can catch them pretty quick. And that's kind of the deal. So you spend a lot of time looking. And then when you do find one, that's got some fish in it, you can put them in the boat pretty quick.
So with that deal, you just throw out, like you said they move shallow in the mornings. Do you fish around the docks? Is it better to have docks in a drain, or?
Not necessarily, but they will get on those too. If you do have some docks, I kind of use those as the sun gets up. I'll start focusing on the docks, but usually they're right dead in the middle of those things.
I got you.
So, yeah. And, I look for like 45-degree angle banks, that kind of thing, where you've got a good bank. But, I don't look for these long, more or less what I call flats that have a ditch in them. I look for kind of those where I've got banks that are 45 degrees on both sides.
I got you.
They seem to be a little bit better in the wintertime. As we move and progress into the spring a little bit, the flatter fingers that have a drain in the middle of them can be good, but right now this time of year it seems to be the 45s. But that's not the only thing going on. I mean, that's something that it seems to work good in the morning, first thing in the morning, but as the day progresses, there's several other patterns that are going to play next week for sure.
What do you think those are? Like you mentioned the timber. Is that the deal like it is in the summer where you get out there and with a drop shot or some kind of finesse deal and catch them in that timber?
Yeah, you can, but it's usually like right where the timber ends, and where it ends in these pockets. And again, that's in about 35 feet of water, and it's bait related. So if you see the bait, and a lot of times you can just get around and graph, and you'll see the arches, you'll see the fish suspended too, and you can catch them on a drop shot, a Ned rig, even something light that kind of falls slow. I like catching them on a Nico rig or like a wacky rig Senko that you can weight with, say, like an 1/8 ounce or lighter piece of lead, and you just kind of throw that thing out and just let it fall real slow. Or if you see them on the graph, you can just pitch it out in front of you, and it takes a while for it to get down, but they don't seem to like something dropping real fast on them unless it's a spoon. But with that wacky rig or that Nico rig, it's just kind of a slow kind of flutter down fall, and they seem to the line will just get tight, and you'll pull into them. But that seems to be the deal for that.
Where is that timber all over the lake, or is it mainly in that lower end or the midsection?
It's in the midsection and in the lower end. It's when they flooded it, it was the Corps of Engineers. They left that they topped that timber off, but like I said, it's usually down. It starts at about 30 feet, 35 feet is where you'll start to see the timber.
What you mentioned some of the guys catching largemouth. Is that just going to be in the backs of these creeks and rivers, or typical spinnerbait square bait?
Up in the rivers or in the south end creeks. Like there's a couple creeks like Bald Ridge, which is all the way down by the dam. If you go all the way up into the back of that creek, it's got some colored water. And there's certainly largemouth that get caught in the south end, all the way in the backs of these creeks that have a little bit dirty water coming into them. But primarily north of Browns Bridge, a lot of the pockets off of the Chattahoochee River and the Chesapeake River that have, it's not grass, but it's like sticks or stick grass, hay grass. You'll see some of that in these pockets, and a spinnerbait seems to work real well. I know a bunch of guys in the tour event last year caught them throwing chatterbaits and spinnerbaits in those pockets that have that bank grass.
Up the Chattahoochee?
Yeah, Chattahoochee and the Chestatee. Both of those arms will have that. And that's kind of a deal where you just cover a lot of water. And there's a lot of release fish. We have a lot of tournaments that go out of Laurel Park up the river. And so that area of the lake, within 5 miles of that launch ramp, all those pockets up there seem to be good too, just because there's a lot of fish that get replanted up there that are caught in the south end or in other areas of the lake.
I would assume I haven't looked, but I'm sure that's where the Elite's going out of. Wouldn't you imagine?
Yeah, they'll definitely be some guys that will throw a crankbait up there or throw a spinnerbait in those pockets. Especially if the water's in the 50s, that'll play. really think the spotted bass are going to be the ticket, and it's going to be one, either in the mid-lake area or more likely south of Browns Bridge.
What do you think? What do you think the biggest bag we'll see? I think there was a 23-pound bag for the winter last year in that FOW Tour event in March. Was that the biggest bag of that tournament?
Yeah, and there's no telling. I mean, there's definitely going to be some bags. I mean, I think a lot of the local tournaments are getting one with 21, 20 pounds. So I mean, there's definitely going to be some bags over 20 pounds. It's not unheard of to see a 25-pound bag of spotted bass in these winter tournaments.
Dang.
So you could see somebody that gets on those big, 4 to upper 5-pound spotted bass, 5-pound spotted bass that come in with 24, 25 pounds. I don't think that you're going to be able to duplicate that every day, but certainly one day in the tournament, you could see a real big bag like that caught. So,
you talked about the drains. Talked a little bit about the largemouth deal. Do the fish get on the humps and points now, or is that later in the?
They do. The points will definitely play. You mentioned the Kitech play. Last year that was a factor too. In our tournament that was in early March, and that's throwing that Kitech on. You want to find, Zach Burge did really well in the Mid-Lake area, an area we're called Chestatee Bay that's just north of the Browns Bridge. And there's a series of points that are in that bay, and then off the main river channel that have access to deep water, the big clay points. And you essentially will throw that Kitech in about, let it hit the bottom at about 15 to 17 foot, and kind of slow roll it, just barely reel it down to about 30 foot of water, and with like a quarter ounce weight, and just reel that thing real slow, and you'll catch some really good fish doing it. And he did very well in the tournament on that pattern, and I think Mark Rose was doing it as well. And it'll work down in the south end too on those points, also. And there is a chance too. Like I caught him pretty good in the morning, jerkbaiting those points on the first day, where I could catch, I could get 13, 14 pounds in the boat. Fairly quick throwing a jerkbait around those points, but that kind of died, and the fish kind of, the water seemed to get colder, and the fish got a little bit deeper, and the Kitech seemed to work better than the jerkbait. But the jerkbait definitely could be a factor as well in this tournament. I would definitely see some guys catching them on the jerkbait. The other thing that I think is going to play is, I had 19 pounds the first day fishing marinas and seawalls and what I call a vertical structure, over really deep water, like 60, 70 foot of water. But those fish will suspend around the cables that are attached to those big houseboat marinas, and you can catch them on a wacky rig or a Ned rig, and you're basically fishing for suspended fish that are about 12 feet from the top of the water column, 12 to 15 feet from the top of the water column, but they're underneath either the seawall or the floats, or they suspend around those cables, which is interesting. And you'll catch them that way too.
Well, that's all good stuff, man. I guess what I'd like to do with you now is talk about my fantasy fishing team, see if you got any advice on that. So I got Cliff Perch, Hank Cherry, Clint Davis, Stetson Blaylock, and Paul Mueller. All those guys got a pretty good bit of history, not necessarily just on that fishery, but with the spots, and like talk about the jerkbait deal. Hank Cherry's one of the best out there with that, so be interested to see if he can make a real play. But of those buckets, I mean, the bucket I got Cliff Perch in, the 8 bucket, you got basically the top 15 from the first event. I think that's how they're breaking it up. It's Angler of the Year ranking. Each bucket's got 15 guys from the point system. So you got Rick Clun, John Cruz, Chris Johnson, Mark Menendez, Patrick Walters, Lee Livesey, Cliff Perch, Corey Johnson, Robbie Latuso, Scott Canterbury, Kelly J, Brandon Lester, Chad Morgan-Thaler, Clark Winlet, and Matt Airy. You got anybody you like better than Cliff Perch in that bucket?
Well, Matt Airy, man, he's a Lake Norman guy.
Yeah.
So he understands the herring bite. I know Lake Norman has herring in it now, and he's solid, man. Anywhere in the country, especially on these Clearwater lakes. I mean, he's won out at Beaver a couple times. He'll know what to do on Lanier. He's got experience on Lanier. Another guy that didn't start the season off very well is Gussie. He'll do well on Lanier.
Yeah, I saw.
He's a guy you're going to want to look at too. He's done well here before, and he likes to fish for spotted bass. So I think he'll have a pretty good tournament.
He was 61st. He's in the E bucket now. I had Paul Mueller in that group because he's so good with Panoptics and suspended fish and graphs and everything. But that's the bucket that Gustafson's in. And the other guys, Keith Combs, Brian Snowden, Randy Pearson, Harvey Horn, Skylar Hamilton, Brett Pruitt, Garrett Paquette, Chris Groh, Rick Morris, Caleb Summerall, Carl Jackson, Randy Sullivan, David Fritz. So really, I mean, Gussie and Paul Mueller would probably be the two two guys to go with. And I saw, didn't Gussie finish second in that tour event last year over there in March?
Yeah, he was in the top 5. I think he was. I'm not sure if it was second, but I know he was in the top 5 when I remember.
All right, I'm gonna swap.
He's solid, man. On the deep bite.
Yeah.
He likes fishing deep and offshore, so I would see him doing well on this thing.
Well, I swapped from Paul Mueller for that category to Gussie, so we'll see if I'm upset with you or happy with you after the tournament.
It'll be a fun tournament, and they're gonna catch a lot of fish. The guys who get on them will catch them. It's just that's kind of the deal. And the thing about it is it can be frustrating because if it's a wintertime tournament, they get kind of grouped up and they do certain things. And so the guys that get on them will get on them, but there's going to be a lot of guys that don't get on them and don't catch anything, and it gets really frustrating. But the lake is healthy, and it's definitely one of the best spotted bass fisheries in the country. So I'm sure we're going to see some heavy weights at the top end.
What do you think as far as weights go? What do you think the winning weight will be for 4 days? I think it was 68.4 for March last year when y'all were there. Are the weights a little heavier now usually, or in March, or is it just all depending on the weather, like you said before?
Yeah, the weather will have a lot to do with it, but I mean it's definitely going to be over 60 pounds. 15 a day is always solid over 4 days. Not so much in a one-day deal, but over 4 days. So I think it's going to be somewhere between 60 and 70 pounds. I mean, if a guy caught 17 a day, and you get up there to 68, then you there's a pretty good chance you're going to win it. So it's somewhere between 60 and 68 pounds.
Yeah, like last year in that FLW tour, I think the guy that ended up winning had 23 on the first day and 18 on the second. And I mean, he was running away with it at that point.
Yeah, he kind of hung on. Brad, was it Hallman?
Yeah,
which was impressive. But he was on that marina deal the first day when he caught that real big bag.
Yeah.
And you catch him on a swim bait around that marina, the marinas, jerk baits if it's windy. And then if it's calm, the Ned rig works, or the wacky rig, that kind of thing. But I think he termed he was calling them fence pandas. He came up with a new name for the spotted bass that live around those seawalls.
Yeah.
So that deal is somebody is going to make a top 10 fishing the marinas for sure. There's no doubt about that.
Well, Jason, I appreciate it, bud. I'm going to cut you loose. Safe travels. Good luck in Seminole here in a couple of weeks. 3 weeks, I guess it is. And I think that'll be the next tournament we actually talk about on predicting patterns. So I appreciate your time tonight. Be careful heading on in, and good luck out there.
I appreciate it, man. You have a good night.
All right, bud. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it, guys. Another episode of Predicting Patterns in the books. Lake Lanier, looking at maybe 68.4 last year, a little later in the year. I'm going to call it at 70 pounds. I think we're going to have a real good derby and see some monster bags. So 70 pounds. Who am I going to pick to win it? Let's go back to my fantasy team here. Don't know. Perch. Hank Cherry. If they were going to be pretty shallow, I'd probably go with Cherry with a jerkbait deal. But Clint Davis, Blaylock, Gussie. I'm going to go with Clint Davis. We'll see if he can't go out there and get it done. He's a local boy down here around the house and go all the way back to the college fishing days with him. So I'm going to pick old Clint Davis, see what happens. That's my winner with 70 pounds. And we'll see if I'm right. We'll see if I'm wrong. Either way, enjoyed it. Good show. You guys have a good one. We'll see you next time.